The exhaustion was always the first thing he offered, like a doctor showing an X-ray that explained the pain. 67 hours this week, babe, Julian sighed, kicking off his shoes at the door. I'm running on fumes. I believed him because I wanted to, and because the numbers sounded real. The dawn flights to Denver, the midnight calls with Singapore, the spreadsheets that multiplied in his dreams. I believed him because our twins, 4 years old and molting energy like Labrador puppies, still catapulted into his arms every evening, and he caught them. Even if he lowered them to the carpet more quickly than he used to, we hired Anna to bridge the gaps. She arrived at 7:30 each morning with organic fruit strips in her tote and a smile that made the kitchen feel brighter than the expensive LED panels Julian had installed. The camera came later, a tiny owl-eyed device tucked between the cookbooks and the ceramic canisters. I told myself it was for the children's safety, for Anna's protection, for my own peace of mind when I was at the clinic stitching wounds that were never metaphorical. I did not admit I was also filming the father of my children, because suspicion is a darkroom where innocence goes to develop into something sharper. For 2 weeks the footage was mundane. Cereal avalanches, dance party tangos to Disney soundtracks, naptime migrations from couch to bed. Julian came home each evening rumpled and repentant, kissing the tops of small heads before collapsing into our own bed, shoes still laced. I lay beside him counting the seconds until his breathing deepened, measuring the weight of his arm across my ribs as if gravity itself might be falsified. On the 15th night the owl camera blinked awake at 3:07 p.m. Julian was supposed to be in Chicago. I know because I had put him in the Uber myself at 4:30 that morning, kissed the stubble that smelled of airport coffee and sleepy apologies. Yet there he was in the kitchen, sleeves rolled, tie missing, opening the refrigerator with the ease of a man who believed the house was empty except for the woman who was not his wife. Anna stood at the island slicing strawberries. She wore the yellow cotton dress I had bought her for her birthday, the one with tiny white daisies that made her look 19 instead of 24. Julian said something the microphone failed to catch. She laughed, the same bright laugh I adored when it answered the twins' endless questions. Then he moved behind her, hands covering hers on the knife, guiding the blade through the fruit in slow, deliberate strokes. I watched the red seed smear across their knuckles and felt something inside me tear along the exact seam that had once held our daughter's heartbeat against my own. They did not kiss. Not on camera. But the choreography was older than language. The way her shoulders relaxed into the cradle of his chest, the way his lips brushed the shell of her ear, the way both of them kept their eyes on the knife as if it were the only witness that mattered. When the strawberries were a scarlet mosaic, he stepped away, wiped his fingers on a dish towel, and left the frame. Anna stared after him a moment longer, then carried the bowl to the table. Humming something tuneless and private, I stopped the playback, started it, stopped it again. My pulse was a hummingbird smashing against glass. I wanted there to be an explanation that fit inside the borders of the screen. Maybe he had missed his flight, maybe Anna had cut herself and he was applying pressure, maybe exhaustion caused hallucinations that bled into pixelated lies. But the timestamp was relentless, and the tie I had straightened at dawn hung over the chair like a noose of facts. I drove home early. The twins were at the park with Anna. Julian, according to his last text, was trapped in a conference room hashing out Q4 projections. I stood in the kitchen and felt the ghost of their joint breath still hovering above the cutting board. The strawberries were gone, only the leafy crowns left in the compost. I opened the refrigerator and found the bowl covered in plastic wrap, the fruit already weeping juice. I imagined him feeding her one berry at a time, the twins napping oblivious down the hall, and the hummingbird inside my chest turned into a hawk. When Anna returned, cheeks pink from October air, I was sitting at the table with the camera in my palm like a broken rosary. She took one look and knew. The color left her face in a single tide. The children thundered toward their toy corner. I heard plastic bricks scatter like distant gunfire. I didn't mean, she began, but I held up a hand. I had spent the afternoon practicing this silence, honing it into a blade. She told me in fragments. It had started 6 weeks earlier, the day the twins learned to pump their legs on the swings. Julian had come home early, stood beside her in the backyard, brushed her wrist, accidentally. After that, the accidents grew intentional. Hands over hands in the kitchen, mouths in the pantry while Daniel Tiger sang from the living room speaker, promises that he and I were more like roommates, that the marriage had calcified under the weight of shared mortgages and mismatched libidos. He had never forced her, she insisted. He had simply worn her down with the persistence of rain against limestone. I wanted to hate her, but what I felt was worse: recognition. I too had once been 24, hungry for importance, mistaking attention for oxygen. I sent her home with 2 weeks severance and a warning that my lawyer would be in touch. She left crying into the sleeve of the daisy dress, the twins clutching her legs, sensing abandonment but not its architecture. Julian arrived at 6, buoyant with counterfeit fatigue, loosening the tie he had never worn that day. I met him at the door with the camera feed already cued on my phone. I watched his face cycle through the same 3 colors I had seen on Anna's: denial, guilt, the sick gray of a man realizing the ice was always thinner. He started with the familiar anthem: exhaustion, loneliness, the terror of becoming invisible inside his own life. He had not meant to hurt me, only to feel seen, to prove he still existed beyond the direct deposit paychecks and the bedtime stories that left him hoarse. The affair was just physical, a handful of encounters, always while I was saving strangers' lives downtown. He swore it was over, had ended the moment I walked in with the cameras unblinking-eyed. I listened until the words became white noise, until I could hear the twins whispering to their stuffed dinosaurs, until I could hear my own heart rebuilding its shattered rooms. Then I asked the only question whose answer still mattered: did you feed her our strawberries? He blinked, confused by the triviality. What? The strawberries I bought for our children. The ones you sliced while you pressed against her. Did you let her eat them? He nodded, slowly, as if the motion might detonate something. I took the bowl from the refrigerator, peeled back the plastic, and appended it into the sink. The fruit hit the stainless steel with a sound like small fists. I turned on the disposal and watched red pulp liquefy, seeds spinning in the vortex. Julian reached to switch it off. I blocked his arm. We stood there listening to the machine devour the evidence of our shared soil, the last sweet thing I would ever cook for him. When the grinding stopped, I handed him the camera. You can keep it, I said. I've seen enough. He left that night, driving away in the same Uber he had supposedly taken to the airport 14 hours earlier. The twins asked where Daddy went. I told them he had to work very late, that exhaustion sometimes sends people to places they cannot name. I rocked them to sleep with my body between theirs and the door, humming lullabies that tasted of iron. Tomorrow I will change the locks, call a lawyer, plant new strawberries in a pot on the balcony where only the sun can reach them. Tomorrow I will explain to 2 4-year-olds that love can be exhausted, that homes can have cameras but no film, that sometimes the people who claim fatigue are the ones running the longest races against themselves. Tonight I sit in the kitchen, the disposal finally quiet, and I watch the empty bowl glint under the pendant light. I understand now that privacy is not the opposite of surveillance. It is the opposite of performance. And Julian, for all his hours logged and miles flown, never realized the most dangerous lens is the one you forget is watching when you believe you are finally, blissfully alone.